Hi, it's Tammy. I heard myself say something yesterday that I've never said before, although I realize it's how I work. And it's interesting, we become so used to doing something that it becomes difficult to explain. And that's part of my block when it comes to teaching people about the type of work that I do. And that statement that I made yesterday was, even though we're looking for symptom relief and we're dealing with health conditions, my work is generated from long-term effects. So when somebody asks me about a particular essential oil, I immediately go into internal in my own head. Um, I, I recognize what that oil can do right down to individual constituents. And so it sometimes becomes very difficult and overwhelming when I am speaking to people. Not overwhelming for me, but the person I'm speaking to, because all of a sudden I've just rattled out a lot of stuff, and they may or may not be interested in it. So, with that in mind, I thought I would talk a little bit today, and I may actually end up doing this sequentially. And if there's any requests for a specific oil, please let me know. And I will provide you with the information. However, that said, today I want to talk about lavender. I feel like I'm a lavender basher, um, and it's not that. It's I have no aversion to the aroma. I have my aversion to lavender is the fact that it's overused. I have significant challenges, if you will, with the way we as a society overdo aromas, and for that matter, any chemical. We're not paying attention to that. No matter what we're putting on, no matter what we're inhaling, no matter what we're ingesting or drinking, or it doesn't make any difference. Everything has a chemical in it, and that chemical is affecting the body somehow. The body is designed to break these chemicals down and therefore excrete the secondary metabolites that are no longer useful. I know I said I was going to talk about lavender, but I just want to let you know that, that's actually how they come up with a lot of that is how one way they come up with medications, because they look at how these plants are affecting the body and the subsequent secondary metabolites, and then what they're doing in the body. Caffeine is a good example. Caffeine is metabolized in the body, and it's broken down into xanthine, which is now used as an asthma medication. It also breaks down into theophylline and theobromine. Theobromine is actually found in cocoa. So that's actually where a friend of mine actually owned a place in Albuquerque, and I think they're still open, called Theobroma, and it was a chocolatier. Meaning, obviously, cocoa has been known to have caffeine in it. Now, caffeine on its own is not problematic. It's what happens within the body that, and how it's being broken down, as well as whether or not it's being broken down effectively. Therefore, pardon me. With that in mind, I wanted to say that the genes that produce the enzymes to help produce the secondary metabolites often have adaptations on them, and they've studied this culturally to see who's got what, and Caucasians have more of one, Asians have more of another. Generally we're seeing more and more breakdowns on these, I should say adaptations on these genes, which is compromising our body's ability to fully metabolize these chemicals that we're ingesting. So, so I really want to point out that it's very important. I want to kind of bring it back and just remind everyone that we can't avoid the chemicals. They're everywhere. But being more cognizant of what we are introducing to the body is imperative, especially when you're dealing with any number of health conditions, whether it be mental and or physical. Generally, in my opinion, the chemical imbalances within the brain affect our physical health. they are used, the neurotransmitters are used for many other functions besides just mood and emotion, the way we express ourselves. So I've said an awful lot thus far, and what I really want to do is come back to, I'm not a lavender basher. I just feel like we are overusing a lot of things, and lavender has been known to have some amazing effects, and this is the reason why it's used. It's considered safe with children. It's considered mild enough, although there are people who don't care for the aroma. But it's a more favorite. It's more of a favorite amongst the population, so therefore it's used quite often. So one of the things I want to point out is it really depends on the source of your body care products that are including lavender, because lavender is very easily altered during harvest. Farmers have been known to spray what they call esters. Esters is a chemical that that's found naturally in plants, but it's kind of like an MSG. It enhances the aroma, and it enhances. So it doesn't necessarily enhance the ultimate effect of the plant when it's distilled, but it does affect the aroma and it makes it more appealing to the to the buyers. So one of the things that they're doing is they're actually spraying these fields with esters right before harvest, so that when it gets tested with the gas chromatograph or any of the chromatographs or the spectrographs, I retract that last statement. Within the chromatographs, I got a little tongue-tied there, they're showing up as a higher quality oil. But the fact is that they have been invalidated, that's my word, because they've been adulterated with these esters. Now, what those esters are and the origins of those esters remains to be seen. We don't know, but my guess is they're probably synthetically reproduced in labs. It's more cost effective that way, and therefore they get a better quality smelling oil once it's distilled, and the buyers snatch it up. So now you have a lavender that we don't even really know what the chemicals are that are being used. And that's if the product contains true lavender. Oftentimes these products don't contain true lavender. They contain a form of lavender, which therefore the constituents are a little bit different. The crop, it tends to have a higher yield. They can again spray it with the esters to make it smell more like a true lavender, but the constituents underlying that are different, and they have an ultimate different effect on the body. And that's really where I come from. It's understanding what we're using so that we can have a more positive long-term effect, not just symptom relief. And that's one thing that we have to work on as a society, is be able to unravel our brain around just symptom relief. We've been, it's all over the place. It's on the television when you see commercials for medications. My goodness, even on the YouTube videos, sometimes I see commercials for medications. And we're being told that, quick fix. I mean, we have microwaves, everything's right now. But the fact is that some things take longer, and there are long-term effects, and as well as immediate effects. So coming back to the use of just chemicals in general, no matter if you see an immediate result, it doesn't mean that it's not doing something to your body. It means sometimes the effects are just that subtle. And understanding and accepting that everything that we consume is affecting us both immediately and or long term. We do know that with genetic adaptations that some of these adaptations are silent, and it's long term, eventually turning itself off and ultimately leading to some kind of health condition. Medications have that effect on people. Any chemical has that effect on people. So besides not being a lavender basher, I'm not a pharmaceutical basher. I see too much of that on the internet, and I don't know that it's necessary. In fact, I don't think it's necessary because we've been given these tools, which is our brains and our intelligence, to be able to figure out how to help one another on a larger scale. But there's so much talk of use of herbs and oils these days that I really want to be a voice in saying, please use caution. And today, like I said, it's about lavender. So with these two different types of lavender, depending if it's the true lavender, you have it's estrogen enhancing, so it can cause estrogen levels to go up. In fact, it does, and depending on who's consuming it, if there is a possibility of breast or prostate cancer in that family, you're setting yourself up for a higher risk of breast and prostate cancer. So that's one concern. Another concern is that when estrogen levels go up, it increases your histamine levels. And histamine is a major problem for a lot of us. The major histocompatibility complex, which is a genetic sequence that affects our immune system, relies on histamine as part of the chemicals to get things working. So histamine is definitely wrapped into our immune system. If you have problems on two other genes, one that metabolizes, which is the DAO gene, or the HMT gene, which inactivates histamine when we've had too much histamine, or there's an issue along the methylation pathway, we rely on the HMT gene to help inactivate excessive histamine. So there's a couple of areas right there that are kind of foggy, and what I see in many people is there's some defunct, some kind of funny thing happening in their area of histamine. So if you increase your estrogen levels, you've increased histamine levels. And the reason that's an issue is because then you end up with irritability, you can end up with insomnia, depression, anxiety, digestive issues, chronic pain, eczema, psoriasis. I mean, you name it. It's at that point, it's full on. The other problem with that is that when those two neurochemicals go up, it increases the systemic issues with regards to yeast. And I know there's a lot of people that struggle with yeast. Autism is one of the ones that frequently gets treated for high yeast levels. Diabetes is another one. You can smell it on some people depending on how severe it is. Women tend to get it vaginally. It shows up in children with regards to thrush from, so it can happen at any point in time. And it could be an indication that histamine's high, estrogen is now high, you have an irritable, cranky baby. You don't want to, even though now I say you go in and we grab that lavender lotion, right, to help soothe that child. What ends up happening is there may be an immediate relaxation. That child calms down. And then you're going to look at me and go, well, see, it works. And I'm going to go, yeah, you're right. The problem is long term. You may be dealing with and putting a Band-Aid on the immediate issue, but long term, you're still continuing to keep the histamine levels amped. You've got the estrogen cranked, and it's not eliminating the yeast. And if there's another problem within the body that, which is considered the fermentation cycle, also known as glycolysis, where the body begins to break down and pair various sugars with carbohydrates and proteins, and I'm sorry, not carbohydrates, but starts to pair carbohydrates with proteins and fats for tissue development. If there's an issue in that area, you're already predisposed to high yeast levels. So there again, lavender now can long-term have some pretty significant effects in the body if we're constantly using shampoos and conditioners or lotions or soaps that are scented with lavender. And then you have other products such as dishwashing soap, I think I've seen, possibly laundry detergent. I don't know that they're actually using real essential oils. They probably are just using fragrance grade. And there's not much to be concerned there other than the fact that these are chemicals that are, again, having long-term effects. Now, what is my issue with long-term effects? Well, the fact of the matter is we're all seeking to have a quality of life and a healthier life. And that's the reason why we donate money for research. This is the reason why we want to see cures for autism and diabetes and cancer. I mean, we're ALS. It doesn't make any difference. We all want to see something come about because we've lost people in our lives due to these health conditions. Alzheimer's is another one. Parkinson's is another one. People in our lives, people that we have loved, have lost their lives to this. Friends have lost their lives to this, or they struggle with these conditions for most of their lives. And even though, it's not happening to us, there is that little voice in the back of our mind that is concerned. And so the long-term effects and being cognizant of what we're putting in and helping the body to regulate to the best of its ability is imperative. So that is one of the concerns with lavender. Another concern with lavender is if you're not getting a true lavender and you're getting one of the ones that has the different constituents in it that I mentioned, those can be neurotoxic. And if you are someone who lives with seizures and or possibly looking at, developing seizures, such as in the area of autism, then the chances of increasing that are significant. And these neurotoxins, what I mean by that is it's affecting the body's, it's enabling the body, is disabling the body from actually converting glutamate into GABA. So it has, so what ends up happening is that's one way. And glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter, which now can be neurotoxic. It's an aggravant to the nervous system. Another concern there is the nitric oxide synthase genetic system that it produces, when that's not functioning properly, produces something called peroxynitrite, and peroxynitrite is also linked to cardiovascular and respiratory issues, as well as being a neurotoxin. So depending, therefore, on the rest of your sequence, you may end up with cardiovascular issues, respiratory issues, a little bit of both, some digestive issues, because it does aggravate tissues, is the way I want to say it. And depending on what the rest of your sequence is, it could possibly cause nerve irritation, demyelination of the nerve sheath. So, which we know as in MS. There's also lupus, which has the breakdown of tissue, and so therefore lavender isn't good for any of these conditions, let alone for anybody who is possibly looking at that in their future. For those people who are sitting in a position where they're reasonably healthy and they're only dealing with a few things, and you look into your family and you see what other people have been dealing with, and it's possible that something could crop up that is not expected, and that's not because they've done anything wrong. It's just that is due to their epigenome and the things that they've been exposed to. It has set it up for something else. However, that said, you have the possibility of actually having the same thing. And so if you're sitting in a position where you're reasonably healthy, you're only dealing with a few things, and the opportunity for you is to offset that future and have a higher quality of life. My heart breaks every time I hear about somebody. It doesn't make any difference how old they are. It could be a child. I mean, people are leaving, and what I mean by leaving is passing at any number, at any age. And it breaks my heart to hear about the suffering that's gone on to that, and their strength and their courage. And I got to